shift gears a little bit now and kind of move in and talk a little bit about what TDOT is doing and about how we deliver projects in Tennessee. Just to start off, just to give you all an idea, TDOT has a $1.84 billion budget. We are a large agency, but if you spread $1.84 billion out over all 95 counties, it's a pretty thin piece of mayonnaise on the bread of Tennessee. A little over half of our money is federal dollars. Our heavy construction program, the big projects that y'all see us deliver, widening highways, building new roads and stuff, that comes out of our federal funds. State dollars are largely used to do maintenance activities, mowing grass, snow and ice removal, pothole patching, and matching federal aid. As the commissioner said earlier, about each federal dollar requires about a 20% match. So the bulk of our money does go to projects, and also wanted to show you a little bit about exactly how that goes out there. The big thing that we do, about 90% of the dollars that come into TDOT go back out the door in the way of transportation products and services, in the way of construction, maintenance, and grants. So most of the money that comes into TDOT goes right back out. So you're seeing delivered on the street transportation products with the money that comes into the department. Only about 2% of our budget is administrative cost. We really work hard to keep that number low, but somebody's got to pay the electric bill and the water bill and keep paychecks going and things of that nature. So another factor to consider, the governor talked a little bit about heavy equipment, tractor trailers going up and down the interstate and their fuel mileage. Well, for light duty vehicles, automobiles, light duty pickup trucks and stuff, it's the same issue. For all new vehicles built in 1990, for all new vehicles built and sold in the U.S. in 1990, the average mile per gallon was 28 miles per gallon. If you bought a new vehicle that hit right on the average in 1990, and you drove about 15,000 miles a year, you would have paid $213 in state and federal fuel taxes. Moving on down in time a little bit, if you trade cars every few years, in 2013, the average of the entire fleet of vehicles manufactured and sold in the U.S. was 36 miles per gallon. If you drove the same amount that you did in 1990, the tax didn't change, you would have paid $166 a year. In 2025, EPA is mandating all new vehicles sold in the U.S., the fleet has to average 54.5 miles per gallon. So if we don't change anything, it would be down to $107 a year. Now I want to be clear, I don't buy a new car every year, and I imagine most of y'all don't either. The fleet turns over a whole lot slower than that, but what we're trying to show to everybody here is the trend. That over time, as vehicles get more fuel efficient, the dollars that come in to build and maintain our transportation facilities are dwindling, they're getting smaller. If you look at what we have to keep up with, and we have the same responsibility that city and county governments have all across the state. The value of the state highway system in Tennessee is estimated at about $25 billion. The commissioner has made it very clear. The people of Tennessee tell us this in some of the survey work that Tanisha does. Before we go out and build a bunch of new stuff, you maintain what you got. You don't build a swimming pool in the backyard of your roof leaks. And so that's what we try to do. And if you look at our interstates, about 95% of our interstates are in good or very good condition, the pavement is. And so we work very hard to do that. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to make sure that I keep putting enough money into that program. And I can project out the condition of our pavements. We know how they deteriorate over time. And if I continue for the next 10 years to put the same amount of money in the interstate that I am today, I'm going to see about a 40% drop in quality. That's bumpier roads, That's more wear and tear on vehicles. They say nationwide, poor roads cost the average American $516 a year due to tearing up the cars and impacting how they get around. So what we have to do is we have to pull money out of our capital construction, our new stuff budget, and every year I have to keep putting a little bit more in maintaining our network. I've got this same issue. This is looking at just the interstates. I've got the same thing going on my state highway payments. And to some extent, we have the same thing going on with bridges. Bridges have a longer deterioration. You know, they don't go bad as fast as roads do. But it's the same issue that over time, I keep having to put more and more money into these assets. And at the same time, as we widen roads or build new roads, my asset inventory is getting bigger. I have more stuff to keep up with. So, but we do have money to build new capacity. There are dollars available to us to where we can make decisions on new investments in Tennessee. We look at safety, economic growth, congestion. Those are the types of places we want to make investments to address those issues. And when we do that, we do it in roughly 4 phases of project delivery. The first thing we do is when we start a project, we have to do environmental work and planning work. It's about 2% of the total cost of a project. Then we move into design, right-of-way, and construction. Construction is the most expensive piece, about 75% of the cost of a project. But every time we do this, I have to have money to move into each box. As far as checks and balances in state government, you know, TDOT just doesn't need to be out doing its own thing and not asking anybody. We work closely with the State General Assembly, and every year, in support of our budget to the General Assembly, we provide a list of project phases that we're working on. It's individual project phases. So when we start a project, we go to the General Assembly, and that constitutes a commitment. So when we start that project, it goes on a list, and we're going to finish that up. And there are checks and balances in state government where we actually submit reports to the General Assembly, to the State Building Commission, that keeps up with the accounting of how we deliver these projects. So one of the things you have to keep in mind, though, is when I start a project to when I finish a project, in a perfect world, if money grew on the trees, we could do that in about 8 years for a typical big project. Now, I know everybody around says, I got a project that took way more than 8 years. The reality is, money is the biggest issue that affects schedules on projects. And in Tennessee, we average about 12 years from the time where we tell the General Assembly that we're not just talking about it anymore, we're doing it. It's about 12 years to deliver the project. Nationwide, that number is about 15 years. But as dollars become tighter and tighter, as I keep having to pull money out of the capital program to maintain what I already have, that plus on the 12 years gets plus, 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 and the time gets drug out longer and longer. So let me talk a little bit about some of the specific projects in y'all's community here, kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Over in Harriman on US 27, we have a bridge over the Erie River. It was built in 1957. We've done some repair and upgrade work to it. But in the next 10 years, that bridge is going to be where I'm going to have to do a major rehab or a replacement on that bridge. Today, we estimate about $14.5 million for just that one bridge. There's about a little over 8,000 bridges on the state highway system in Tennessee. On the city and county network, there's about 11,000 bridges, so nearly 20,000 bridges in Tennessee. We've replaced through TDOT programs about 8,000 of them in the last 30 years. So there's a whole lot of bridges out there, and they're getting older every day of the week. Another project that's of interest locally here is on Highway 70. We all know when Highway 40 gets shut down, you got to have an alternate route. You also, from an economic development standpoint, the improvements on Highway 70 through here are supporting economic growth in this community. So the work that we've got going, we've got about $1.6 million invested in the early phases, but to finish this project out, we need another $38 million to finish this project. Looking elsewhere here in Lenoir City, we've got a little project on US 321 that we're trying to tie in. It'll help out on the new work we've got under construction with the new bridge over the river, with some improvements on US 321 through here. It's about a $13.8 million project. In the scheme of things, that's not all of that expensive, $13.8 million. But the problem is, I've got projects like this all over the state, and this $13.8 million adds up as a From a big corridor standpoint, we've got some big corridors in this part of the state that are important. Access in rural communities is tremendously important. The US 27 project starting down in Harriman and heading on up toward Wartburg is a really important project to this region of the state because access up into Morgan County and places north of there is so difficult. But right now, I have a $62 million project under contract, but to finish the work, I need another $86 million. That's a lot of money to get that corridor to provide improved access up into Morgan County. Another big project of interest in your community here is, I suspect if sometimes y'all don't want to take an interstate over into Knoxville, you might go on up through Alcoa and go up Alcoa Highway. Everybody knows how congested that is. Right now, y'all probably avoid that at certain times of day, but it's really needs a lot of safety improvements needed in that corridor. Lots of opportunity for economic growth when we get that project finished. But $271 million to finish that project. Very large project. So one of the things I want y'all to kind of keep in mind, I've talked about $425 million worth of projects just in this community. When we go around the state, these are projects that are commitments that we've gone to the General Assembly and said, here's projects we need to do. These commitments all across the state total $6.1 billion. So the issue that we're faced with is we've got, as the commissioner said, $470 or so million annually to tackle about $6.1 billion worth of work. If you do the math, it's a long time we're going to finish before we finish those. And we aren't even talking about the new stuff that Tanisha is identifying through the long-range planning process. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.